ビデオ
So, CGI in anime. It's a growing trend in anime today that's starting to become a hot topic, and obviously, I gotta toss my hat into the ring for a spell. I, like many of my bitter animation fan contemporaries, prefer hand-drawn animation over CGI animation for a multitude of reasons. Mainly because now that 3D graphics have completely become the norm, it almost feels impossible for me to muster up any excitement for it, especially if they're trying to imitate real life as much as possible. Wow, the highest grossing animated film of all time is now a goddamn nature documentary, whoop-de-doo! But back to anime, the reason why so many otaku are leery about CGI in anime is that a lot of them see it as a cheap gimmick, which to be fair in the world of anime it kinda is. It's used as a cost-cutting measure to animate things that would take too much time and money to do the old-fashioned way, let's not even get into frame rates. But at the same time, there is good CGI in anime. Sometimes there are magic moments where it all comes together and makes something truly stunning. I guess what I'm trying to say here is that CGI in anime is a crapshoot. You're either gonna get this, or you're gonna get this. But there is one thing that needs to be drilled into the thick skulls of every seasonal otaku. CGI in anime may be a lot of things, but one thing it is most definitely not is new. Ever since the technology to make 3D computer graphics was available in Japan, you better believe that studios were trying to find ways to combine it with anime. Probably one of the first big successes with merging the two styles was seen in the intro to the 1984 film Lensman, but even then it was obvious that the technology was not there yet. So CGI only appeared in anime once in a blue moon with mixed results. Oh my god. What? It wasn't until 1995's Ghost in the Shell that the practical use of CGI in anime now felt like more of a possibility. But even then, a lot of studios were hesitant to use the technology in any extensive fashion. It was still uncharted territory for most, and I guess they were all waiting for a studio to come out and take the first real step forward for them. And in 1998, one studio did exactly that.
Blue Dome approach. This is Blue Fleet Submarine number 6. Request docking clearance into Blue Dome.
This is Blue Base Novo 0001. Your ship's identity is confirmed. Cleared for base docking.
In the near future, the oceans have risen and have flooded most offshore land on planet Earth. However, instead of it being the result of ruthless capitalism like it is in the real world, the cause is directed at a mad scientist named Zorndike, a man who has taken the black pill so hard he no longer believes humanity has the right to inherit the Earth.
Mankind has grown too large. Ambitions and cravings, vengeance and hatred. How long must the accursed dance continue?
The remaining human population is locked in an eternal struggle with Zorndike and his army of half-animal hybrids, led by his admiral and surrogate son, Velg. Hey, good to know even after the end of the world, Furry Week in Atlanta is still a go. The best hope for a resolution to this conflict lies within humankind's submarine forces, the Blue Fleet. One of the fleet's submarines, the Blue 6, is given the task to help end the conflict decisively by attacking Zorndike directly. To do this, they send Ensign Mayumi Kino to recruit Tetsu Hayami, a former Blue 6 crew member and gifted pilot. He tells both her and the crew to piss off, but he soon changes his mind. After a lengthy and intense battle with Zorndike's forces, Hayami disobeys orders and ends up saving the life of one of the enemy, an aquatic hybrid by the name of Mutio. A small gesture that ends up sending large shockwaves within the conflict between human and hybrid. And from there, Hayami, Kino, and the rest of Blue 6 are now tasked to decisively put an end to Zorndike and his army before Zorndike decisively puts an end to them by inducing a polar switch and leaving the Earth to his race of hybrid children alone.
Let me repeat that. If this mission fails, if we are unsuccessful, we have no future.
Based off a short-lived manga series from 1967, albeit very loosely, Blue Submarine No. 6 was one of the most ambitious OVAs of the 90s. The main goal of the anime production-wise was to show off the capabilities of digital production, not just in the way of digital pen and paper, but also in the ways of merging hand-drawn 2D animation with fully rendered 3D computer effects. Because of this, Blue Submarine No. 6 was promoted as the future of anime, a slogan that even appeared in the promos for the animes airing on Toonami, which for 95% of you watching this, is most likely where you've heard this anime.
Toonami is proud to present the future of anime in a 4-part miniseries.
World of endless blue.
Blue Submarine No. 6 premieres Monday, November 6th at 6. Only Toonami.
And honestly, I want to like this anime more than I actually do. I wish I could sing praises for this anime about how Blue Submarine No. 6 is actually this masterpiece that's only hindered by its age. But it isn't. It actually has quite a few problems that I would prefer not be there. This is just another in a long line of what I call frustrating anime. Anime that, if it wasn't bogged down by so many major problems, it would be a title I could hold over my head and scream from the mountaintops about how brain-crappingly good it is. And I guess this is why this anime of the future is now a relic of the past. Only remembered by millennials who consumed a lot of Cartoon Network at the turn of the millennium. But before we dive right into what Blue Submarine No. 6 does right and what it does wrong, it would be careless to not talk about the studio behind this anime. After all, this was one of their first independent projects, and it would lead them to becoming one of the major anime studios of the new millennium.
Gonzo.
Founded in 1992 by Gainax co-founder Shinji Higuchi and other ex-Gainax staffers, Gonzo was one of the biggest anime production studios of the 2000s. How big? Linkin Park music video big. Studio Gonzo was easily the trailblazer for anime at the turn of the millennium, their ambition only matched by the sheer volume of work they put out between 2000 and 2009. If you came into anime during that decade like I did, there's a good chance one of your first titles was a Gonzo anime. The legacy of Gonzo is interesting because it's both equal parts influential and controversial. Influential in the way that their anime showed that digital pen and paper and computer effects could help craft some of the most beautiful and artistically bold anime of that decade. Controversial because the sheer density of their portfolio meant that for every classic and hidden gem, there was also a bunch of historic failures, sloppy adaptations, and just plain old mediocrity. That and Gonzo had a bit of a reputation for burning through budgets in the way their former colleagues at Gainax could only dream of, the side effects of which almost always made its way on screen. Ouch. By the end of the decade, Studio Gonzo would end up imploding on itself thanks to a perfect storm of talent drain, low sales, and losing the production rights to their only moneymaker at the time, Strike Witches. The studio still exists, but is very much a shell of its former self. See their recent output for that. But what makes Gonzo, and by extension Blue Submarine No. 6, so fascinating is that Gonzo started out with a goal to always be on the cutting edge. Innovation was the name of the game for them. They were the first to release anime that was available online first. They were the first anime company to invest heavily in Crunchyroll when it first launched in 2008. And with Blue Submarine No. 6, it showed us that Gonzo devoted itself into making their first step in the anime world by embracing the digital tools of the trade, the first step towards the future. So, how does that first step towards the future look 20 years later? Wait. I need to put a more appropriate soundtrack to this. Time is not always innovation's friend. The reason why so many people have such a resistance to CGI even today is because it ages quicker than hand-drawn animation, and this is a prime example. I mean, I can see why this was considered revolutionary for the time, but it doesn't change the fact that the majority of CGI on display can range from pretty good for a PS1 FMV cutscene to sophomore's midterm project done in Blender. The CGI of this anime looks best when you barely notice it, best utilized as a tool to touch up or improve scenes rather than having it be the focal point. Like this shot where you can see the caustics of the water's surface reflecting off the wall. But as ravaged by the sands of time as the CGI is, the actual 2D hand-drawn animation hasn't aged a day. I said my piece before about how the transition between traditional cell animation to digital animation was not a clean one, but since Gonzo was founded on the principle of embracing innovation, it appears that they were the first studio to really understand the intricacies of digital coloring. Most of the color palette is very subdued, which best reflects the serious downbeat atmosphere of the whole anime, but check out the lighting of certain scenes. They really add an element of realism from the bright ocean surface to the dark abyssal depths, to the gloomy overcast flooded cities, to the submarine's interior where everyone is bathed in intense reds and blues. But the best animation in this anime is all in the character animation. The 2D drawings are already chock full of detail in the machinery, but the character animation is where you get to see all that detail in motion. Blue Submarine No. 6 has a lot of Sakuga masters on board like Mitsuo Iso, Toshiyuki Inoue, Hideki Hamasu, and Takeshi Honda on board, and their talents are not wasted in any shape or form. Nothing about the way the characters move feels telegraphed, if that makes sense. There's this feeling of naturalism in the animation, like a character bumping into another character when they are running off in another direction, or the subtle differences between the individuals in a crowd fleeing a scene. It's the little touches that gives this anime a very human touch. Where the animation is really the best, however, is in the sheer raw emotion it can wring out of its characters. Going back to that human touch again, the animators really understood how to convey a lot of emotion through a character in a way that feels realistic yet moving. This goes double for the hybrid characters. Character designer Takuchi Kusanagi talked about how when creating characters like Mudio and Velg, he wanted to create characters that were monstrous yet still human enough to empathize with. That's why scenes featuring the two of them are some of the best examples of the merging between good animation and good drama in anime.
Perhaps you have forgotten about Red Spot? About what those monsters did to him? Swear that you will avenge his memory! Swear it!
However, characters can't just be well animated to get you invested in them. They also have to be well written. I mean, obviously. The main cast is certainly compelling. The protagonist Hayami is an interesting take on the Han Solo archetype. He's this disparaging slacker who's obviously suffering through some intense survivor's guilt, thanks to his partner Nonaka sacrificing himself in order to save his life years ago during a mission where they disobeyed orders to confront Zorndike themselves. His cynicism towards Blue Fleet's mission isn't treated as something roguishly charming, but called out as rightfully selfish.
So that's the plan? Nuke the Psycho? No, that's original.
Hayami is the only option we have left now.
So, in the end, we're no different, are we?
But that doesn't really make him a guy who's only in it for himself. As seen in the first episode, he saves the life of Mudio, an enemy combatant, so it does show he still has some empathy for the lives of others. He just really comes off as a guy who had his ideals beaten out of him after giving the best years of his life to what he now sees as fighting for a lost cause.
If the pole shift succeeds, we'll have no place left to live. We'll vanish off the face of the earth eventually. Then you guys will be free to create a new world. A world of endless blue.
Kino, by contrast, is a far more straightforward character, but just as interesting. She definitely plays off Hayami well with an attitude that's both by the book, yet full of youthful passion.
Sorry, I'm just upset. Aren't you?
Why should I be?
Look, it's not like we ran because we wanted to run. It's just that we can't let anything happen to this boat, whatever the cost. What?
If it's so important, then you should lock it away in a vault.
But her motivation is interesting because it's less about saving humanity and more of a single-minded desire for getting vengeance against Zorndike, the man she blames for killing her entire family. And it makes sense why she is less compromising in her beliefs than Hayami.
Zorndike's the enemy, not us!
Does that make it right?
Your problem is you don't want to get any dirt on your own conscience.
But my personal favorite has gotta be Velg.
This is excellent! We will burn them with the unquenchable fire which they themselves created! What a show it will be!
He's such a classic anime villain and has got a great design with him being this cat, shark, human hybrid all decked out like Pirate Lord Humongous. Yes, he certainly comes off as one-dimensional and a bit of a creepy bastard, but at the same time you can't help but feel a teeny bit of sympathy for him. It turns out that Velg is an admiral not because Zorndike appointed him, but out of his own self-volition. You see, the hybrid race sees Zorndike as their father, and by extension, he sees them as their children. Zorndike is implied to see Velg and his crew as nothing more than a gang of problem children who need to come home right now and stop all this foolishness, which just motivates Velg and his crew more to continue their crusade out of a misguided effort to earn the approval of their surrogate daddy.
You would have been so proud! And soon their command center will fall!
Be very careful.
But I talked about these 3 characters in particular because of one reason. They are the most developed characters in the entire anime. They are the ones who get full character arcs, a decent amount of screen time, and enough time is spent with them that you fully understand who their character is and what their motivations are. And I know that you know that there are certainly more than 3 characters in this anime, so now would be the perfect time to segue into the big quibble I have with Blue Submarine number 6. I talked about in my last video how an OVA short length can affect an anime by not allowing it to fully explore its premise, but the differences here are stark. Usagi-chan Deku was adversely affected by its short length. Blue Submarine number 6 is crippled by it. So many plot points and characters are either underdeveloped, ignored outright, or just come to a complete stop right before they reach any sort of meaningful conclusion. A good example would be everyone else on the Blue 6 who isn't Hayami or Kino. You have this colorful, multinational, multi-generational cast of men and women, each with their own shared personality quirks, and we don't get nearly enough screen time with them to fully know who they are or even their names, to be honest. All that information seems to be sequestered off in the prequel video game released for PS1 in Japan only. Come on, anime. These guys look way too visually interesting not to devote at least a roll call montage to them. I'd like to spend at least a little more time with these people.
Top that, Ringling Brothers.
Hey Frida, after the battle, you want to play on my trapeze? Love to watch you swing.
Except for that guy. He can go take a long walk off a short dry dock. The only crew members who get any sort of extended screen time are Captain Iga, who needs to be given screen time because he's the reason Hayami's on board in the first place, and he's the one leading the charge on the nuke Zorndike plan, and Huang, the sonar technician who's also a psychic 10-year-old. Because, yeah. She's given some focus to show her emotional fragility and how one can empathize with the hybrid army given her psychic powers, but for the most part she's just there to act as someone who can pump the brakes on Blue 6 nukem strategy and is sometimes not even successful at that. I could go into more detail on other aborted plot details such as the role of the whale-like Musaka, Nonaka being revealed not only to be alive but a hybrid only to disappear from the plot once Hayami releases him into the ocean, and Zorndike's nameless catgirl daughter who's implied to be his favorite, thus possibly setting up a conflict between her and Velg, but is only given a minute and a half of screen time. But let's sweep all that aside and focus on the real victim of Blue Submarine number 6's length. Mudio ultimately gets done pretty dirty, considering that in the beginning she was set up as the dual protagonist along with Hayami. They really set up the fact that Hayami saving Mudio in the first episode is a huge honkin' deal. Hayami gets reprimanded by Kino, and that's why he even saved the life of an enemy in the first place.
Why did you let it go, Hayami? It was the enemy!
And Mudio gets called out for even letting a human touch her, let alone save her life.
I heard from your sisters. You were touched by one of the landmen. It's true.
And then we get to the third episode where she returns the favor to Hayami, choosing to save his life over returning home to her sisters. It really emphasizes how much Mudio is giving up just by choosing to associate herself with this human, allowing herself to become a hated outcast by her own family. All this for a human she is obviously smitten by. It's intentionally left vague whether or not Hayami returns those feelings or is entirely one-sided, but it's very clear that Hayami does care about Mudio and wants to protect her. And then, once they get separated by the Blue Fleet at the end of that episode, the subplot between Mudio and Hayami gets swept under the rug. Yeah, that's it for the entire subplot. No resolution or anything. The only scene Mudio gets after that episode is the scene where she gets violently cast out of Velg's crew, and a quick scene at the end, but that's it. There's also no mention of the relationship after the third episode. Even during the final tense conversation with Zorndike, there's not even a token flashback when they're talking about the possibility of humans and hybrids coexisting with one another. Shouldn't that have been the logical endpoint to Mudio's character? Be proof that it is possible for man and fish creatures to live together in perfect harmony? It feels like the staff had to throw out some pages of the script in order to fit the length of the OVA, but they ended up throwing out the important pages that made the plot feel a lot more complete than it actually is. But while we're on the subject of plot threads that kind of peter off into nothingness, let's talk about the ending. Or to be more precise, let's talk about Zorndike. Zorndike is, in all honesty, a fairly compelling villain. He's a scientist who believes that humanity squandered its chances to inherit the Earth because of how they treated it, and that's his general motivation for why he flooded the coastlines years ago.
I am merely advancing the hands of the clock just a bit before it is all too late.
So you think you can play God?
Of course not.
He's definitely a person who believes that he's doing the right thing. A man whose good intentions are defined by his desires to wipe a portion of the world's population in order to make it a better place for those he deems worthy to inherit it. No, shoot, get out of here. But then we get to the final confrontation with Zorndike, and the whole bit surrounding him gets a little fuzzier. So Hayami and Kino are able to convince Captain Ira to hold off on the nukes and go ashore to the tropical paradise of Antarctica to meet with Zorndike face to face. It's here where Zorndike lays out his grand motivations and his ultimate plan, which we'll get to that. And it turns out he didn't want to kill off humanity, but rather have humanity live in a world of his own design.
I simply said no to this world. And then I gave birth to my new, wonderful children. I flooded the major cities and the chief grain-producing areas. I thought it could end just by sharply reducing the number of humans alive.
This is where the anime kind of loses track of who Zorndike is supposed to be. The reveal of this seems to want to paint him as callous and uncaring about the lives of people who were destroyed for such a selfish desire, including his own loved ones.
My dear wife, my son and my granddaughter, along with thousands of other unsuspecting people. I found all of them in that hole in the forest.
And at the same time, they want to make it as if he's in the right? What?
They are my children. Like you, they are inexperienced life forms. But you can learn from each other. Learn to respect, even understand each other as equals.
But then we get to hear his ultimate plan. It turns out he ripped his own heart out to turn into a generator that powers the polarity shift that would inevitably kill off humanity and make the world only habitable to his hybrid race. However, it turns out that his heart was too old and weak to power the generator, and that the energy from Blue Fleet's nuke would actually provide enough power to activate the shift. So in other words, he goaded the world's powers to not only destroy more habitable land on Earth, but also unknowingly trigger their own demise in a way that both proves his point that humanity is unworthy to inherit the Earth, as well as provide a delicious example of
You didn't win! You didn't win!
But wait, you ask. I thought he wanted humanity to live. Why is he going through so much effort to not only screw over humanity, but also potentially kill off most of his hybrids who also live on his island base with him? And this is my actual problem with Zorndike. The anime can't nail down who he's actually supposed to be. Is he a devil with good intentions, or a selfish bastard who wanted to remake Earth in his own image? And that heart generator, was it all just a secret test of character to prove that humanity was worth saving? When Kino was able to call off the nuke strike, I was half expecting Zorndike to start clapping and offer a hearty congratulations! And then there's that bit afterwards where Kino is threatening to kill Zorndike so she can ultimately fulfill her revenge, but then realizes that killing him won't bring back her family or reset the world to what it was.
And if you hate me so much, you must shoot me. But the seed has already been planted. This planet will change. And there's no way it can be stopped.
And this is all undercut thanks to Hayami killing Zorndike anyway, because he needs to ensure Zorndike doesn't do this kind of thing again, I guess? Then there's a final scene with Velg beating Hayami to take revenge for his dead father, but ultimately learns the same lesson as Kino did and decides killing both of them and humanity isn't worth it anymore. It's a moving scene once again thanks to the great character animation, but the end point is to show us that humanity and hybrids can live alongside each other in the new world, and that feels redundant because there's a better example of that theme not 3 feet away from you. Hello! And then the anime just kind of comes to a stop. No epilogue or anything, just a complete stop. Okay, honest thoughts here. Blue Submarine No. 6 is an anime that the more times I watch it, the more positives I can pick out of it. When I first watched this anime, I remember coming away feeling very underwhelmed and disappointed. But after a couple of rewatches, I now come away liking the anime a little more each time. However, that makes Blue Submarine No. 6 all the more frustrating. There's just so many of the individual parts of it that feel half-finished or rushed to completion. If it had just taken the time to fully tweak the finer details, maybe even given it an extra episode, Blue Submarine No. 6 could easily still be seen as a classic anime of the late 90s, dated CGI and all. But as it stands, people might go into this, see all the dated CGI and story problems, and just write the anime off as just a novelty of the times. A fate I feel like it doesn't really deserve. This was the first ambitious project created by a studio who was constantly wanting to be on the cutting edge of anime. And for a studio's first step at using brand new technology, they still managed to do a pretty good job. Blue Submarine No. 6 was once touted as the future of anime, and even with all its problems, it showed us that the future was not bleak.
The world will not be destroyed. It will merely change. So long as you wish it.